Hello and welcome to this presentation. My name is Paula Ungureanu. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Modena and Reggio Emilia, and I will be presenting a study which investigates the mediating role of place in how grand challenges translate from policymaking to cross-sectoral partnerships. Grand societal challenges such as climate change, poverty, or economic development are increasingly addressed through cross-sectoral partnerships because policymakers promote them as tools for doing well while also doing good. While doing good regards the social and ethical impact of addressing societal challenges in concerted ways, doing well entails assumptions of utility and efficacy, such that each partner is expected to get a different and but however significant benefit from such collaboration scheme. However, despite their popularity, their recognized value, but also the abundance of policies in their support, cross-sectoral partnerships dealing with grand challenges often report ambiguous, dissatisfying, or even failing outcomes. While the literature has commonly looked at single blames of the policymaker or on the partnership side, there is also growing talk about the lost in translation effect, whereby it is not a specific course of action at the macro, meso, or micro level to push a grand challenge adrift, but it is the interaction of these actions within a translation chain of a grand challenge. The literature on institutional work brings new understandings to this lost in translation effect, which go beyond single blames and responsibilities, and which suggest that the truth about collaboration failure always lies somewhere in between or amidst the different forces that promote, sustain, or even resist change in an institutional field. To push this concept even further, I draw on the actor network theory, which pays specific attention to the role of materiality in translation. According to this theory, interests and intentions in a network do not travel in abstract ways, but as adjustment, a composite of elements, including humans, materials, and technical artifacts, which flexibly adjust to one another and act collectively in the network. From an actor network standpoint, places may play an important yet underexplored role in the trajectory of grand challenges in an institutional field because they represent the material force pushing for transformation of a grand challenge within an institutional field. More recently, we have started to understand what places can do for broad entrepreneurial challenges, for interorganizational collaborations and partnerships, but not how they intervene in the translation of a grand challenge from policymakers to partnerships. As actor in a network, place may provide both affordances and unexpected obstacles and derailments in translation. Therefore, we need a less linear understanding of place in translation. Therefore, the main research question that has motivated this study is how does place shape how grand challenges travel from policymakers to cross-sectoral partnerships, and which adjustments in a translation chain determine whether a partnership goes adrift or stays on course with respect to the direction indicated by policymakers. To answer this question, I draw on empirical evidence from a multi-level longitudinal field study on the grand challenge of smart regional specialization through science and technology parks in Europe. I studied how this challenge of grand specialization was first framed in the European Commission Smart Specialization Strategy, then taken up in a regional project for the setup of a network of 10 science parks within a European region, and finally handed down to a local partnership which aimed at creating the first science park prototype for the regional network. I collected data at all three levels of analysis, combining semi-structured interviews, participant observation, and archival data, as can be seen in the table in this slide. My grounded model investigates how place elasticity shapes the translation of a grand challenge from policymakers to cross-sector partnerships. In particular, it describes a translation chain that unfolds in two temporal intervals, T0 and T1, across three distinct levels: the European Union level, the regional level, and the partnership level, and captures the interplay of three declarative strategies: managerial concerns about doing well, ethical concerns about doing good, and material agency regarding the need of proving that something has been done for real. These declarative strategies are passed down to the lower level through two important types of mobilizing strategies: energizing and warning. I refer to events in this 3 per 2 translation matrix as agencements or agencements in French. The EU discourse about science park partnerships tried to offer a balanced perspective on the potential and the reality of such projects. On the one hand, the EU policy communicates enthusiasm for social change through smart specialization and energizes actors to participate. On the other hand, it also warns against partnering at all costs and advises to make thoughtful considerations about performance, but also about impact on the community before engaging in such projects. For instance, is it worth it? Do I have the right project or the right skills and abilities? Science and technology parks are seen as the ideal means to to embody this balanced vision. The EU policymaker talks about third generation science parks, which are expected to put into practice the lessons learned by the community from past projects, which placed too much attention on physical spaces at the expense of the ethical and the managerial functions for which these were set up. I labeled this material strategy as dashing ideal types about the future. As the region became the collector of EU funding for smart specialization, it also defined the unique goal of creating a regional network of 10 science parks called the High Tech Network and took responsibility as this network's coordinator. The regional strategy took some distance from the balanced approach used at the European level. Discourses were focused mainly on doing good and doing it for real, whereas concerns about doing well were much more marginal than in the case of the EU. Energizing for action was prevalent with respect to warnings, and stretching was the material strategy whereby the ideal type of science park proposed at the European level was transformed into a prototype for the regional network. Last thing to notice here is that the material indications provided at the EU level were thoroughly adopted at the regional level as well. In its initial stages, the partnership was driven by a strong enthusiasm for the realization of a common project and the imperative to come together and act as one. Ethical energizing further increased with respect to the EU level and the regional level, at the expense of managerial considerations in general and warnings about potential collaboration pitfalls in particular. The only recurrent warning that we came across that was the one that was also present at the previous levels regarding not just sites but services. For this purpose, partners plan to accomplish a very large number of collaboration goals and projects in the science park premises. Molding was the main strategy whereby partners' goals and dreams about the future were poured into the virtual models, drafts, and sketches of the future science park. As mentioned earlier, material indications for the setup of the science park were faithfully respected also at the partnership level. The predominant mobilizing strategies at this stage was, as I mentioned before, energizing. The science park was completed according to schedule in 2 years' time and attracted large media attention and received even several architectural awards. However, as the building materialized, the partnership entered a stage of crisis due to difficulties in connecting the initial managerial goals with the actual outcomes. The fact that the park was beautiful, but always empty and unutilized, raised the threat of an imminent partnership bankruptcy. Despite the difficulties in the partnership and the mutual blaming going on, energizing was still the preferred strategy. To avoid failure, the partnership launched an expensive project of expansion of the initial science park, which aimed at increasing by at least 4 times the size of the initial space. The materiality of the building closely reflected this turnaround. It served first as an imminent threat and then as a strategic catalyzer, which relaunched in the future an ever more ambitious vision of the project as better and bigger, as informants termed it. The figure in the slide shows the emplacement trajectory of the science park from an ideal type at the macro level to a prototype at the regional level and up to a virtual model and an experienced artifact at the partnership level. In terms of research and practical implications, I highlight that cross-sectoral partnerships may fail to address grand challenges as expected whenever managerial, ethical, and material concerns travel divergently from policymakers to cross-sectoral partnerships. Place elasticity plays an important role as a translation mechanism and refers to the property of a place to change, adapt, or even to resume shape under the influence of different kinds of expectations and courses of action within a network. Four material strategies sealed different combinations of ethical and managerial concerns. These were dashing, stretching, molding, and extending. These strategies were responsible for the so-called boomerang effect, whereby policymakers' efforts to anticipate problems may end up complicating the efforts down the chain, such that cross-sectoral partnerships tend to repeat the errors of their predecessors. With this being said, I thank you very much for your attention. I look forward for any comments or suggestions. Thank you and take care.